SAAL's Professional Learning and Development Committee, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. SAAL and our committee are committed to involving, featuring, and representing diverse perspectives and identities in our offerings to meet your professional development needs. You can help us achieve this goal by submitting a structured conversation proposal of your own. More information can be found on the SAAL Structured Conversation page, and we will also put that link in the chat. During this presentation, we invite you to participate by asking questions, sharing comments, and providing feedback through the chat function that we will be monitoring. To get us started, please put your name and role in the chat so our presenters can get a sense of who is in the audience today. Please join me in welcoming our presenters, Dr. Leah Halper and Dr. Marjorie Freggens. They will introduce themselves and then share their thoughts on connecting operational data across student affairs.
Great. Thank you so much for having us today, Tori and Marianne. We're excited to present to you all and looking forward to getting to know you all through the chat as well. So thank you for posting your titles and what your roles are. So Marjorie and I are going to be presenting today on this idea of bringing together lots of different data across a university student affairs or student life division and putting that data in one place to be analyzed and visualized. So we'll start with introductions. I think was on the previous slide. Did it go too fast?
Hang on, sorry.
It's okay. I can also just talk. So my name is Leah Halper. I am an associate director in the Center for the Study of Student Life at The Ohio State University. And then Marjorie's here on the call with me. Dr. Marjorie Freggens is a senior research analyst in the same office. To give you a little bit of background in terms of what our office does, the Center for the Study of Student Life is the research and assessment office that serves the entire division of student life or student affairs at Ohio State. And so we are basically, and we'll get a little bit into this, but we have 4 different analysts, and each of those analysts work with very specific units in student life. For instance, Marjorie works with the residential experience units and the administrative excellence units. Another group of units that I work with is academic partnerships and career success. And so examples of those are like our second year transformational experience program and our career development work. And so our office basically works with these units to basically create and analyze actionable data so that our partners in student life can use that data to improve the student experience and make the right decisions for students. So we're really excited to talk to you today. All right, so I think the next slide, I'm going to go over our learning outcomes. Yep. So the goal of this session is basically to talk with you about, especially with large student affairs divisions, what data silos can look like at a university. A large university like Ohio State definitely has those. So we're going to talk about data silos. We're going to talk about how to bring together data from these different data silos for the purpose of sharing that. And then we're going to talk about how to socialize that idea with partners who maybe aren't used to that idea or really thinking of data in that same way. So one note before we get started is that Marjorie and I are happy to be interrupted either via chat or via a hand raise or via just coming off mute. And so please feel free to chime in any of those ways. When I'm speaking, Marjorie will be the one probably responding via chat and then vice versa. So we are going to be monitoring that. So just feel free to interrupt. And then we'll also have time at the end for questions. All right. So I know this is the SAAL group. And so you all are probably familiar with student affairs, but I'm going to tell you something you already know, which is student affairs is pretty specialized. And there's a lot of different departments within student affairs divisions typically. And each department has their own function, their own purpose. And at Ohio State, we have 4 different major areas that make up student life. We call it student life, not student affairs, just so you know. And within those 4 areas, there are about 40 different student life departments. So I'm going to orient you to those before we move on, because I know every single student affairs or student life division at universities are just, they look different, right? So the first is academic partnership and career success. So this is an area that's really focused on student career development and bridging that basically relationship with our academic affairs units. So we have, for instance, a small debt-free pilot program happening at Ohio State that's in there. And then our second year program is another example. Administrative excellence, these are all of our like behind the scenes folks. They usually are working with basically they're not necessarily student facing, but they're working with other like things that end up impacting students. So these are like our financial management friends, our human resources friends, our marketing communications friends, for instance. And then residential experience, these are all the units that make up the residential experience at our university. So our housing and resident education is an example of that, as well as dining services, our facilities and maintenance, etc. And then holistic student support and well-being. This group is often very student facing and really focused on that wellness aspect of being a student. So these are like our leadership development friends. These also include our student wellness center. These also include the Monda Student Resource Center that Ohio State recently launched. So those are some examples. Hopefully that sets a good scene. All right. So, and sorry, I'm pregnant. So if I'm out of breath, it's because I'm pregnant and not because like something is wrong. So just forgive that if you hear me breathing loudly. Okay, so basically all of these, thank you all, very nice with the hearts. Um, due to basically the functions of these different areas, they're really focused on their own purposes, right? And so, for instance, our Buck ID office, which is an administrative excellence, which I didn't mention yet, are really focused on making sure that everybody has an ID card that is working functionally, that can get them into the buildings, and that, I mean, amongst other things, is one of their main purposes. So they have a very specific tracking system to do that, and use an external vendor to be able to do that, right? And then contrast that with potentially recreational sports, which is in our holistic student well-being area. They are really focused on making sure that all of these buildings are working in working order for our students. They're also really focused on the student wellness aspect of physical activity. And they have their own tracking system, which is another external vendor, to really make sure that they know who's coming into the building, who is utilizing their group fitness classes, um, and how do they make sure their equipment is maintained, right? All of that. It's a completely different system than that Buck ID system, even though they're also tracking, right, when students are coming in and out of the building. And so this really creates what we are calling data silos, which is basically data is being collected for a specific purpose and is working for that unit, but that data is not talking to each other and can't necessarily be brought together very easily due to these different systems. So we know that college students don't experience college in all of these silos the way that we're used to it in working at a university, right? They experience college very holistically. Their experience with a rec sports and their Buck ID card like seamlessly come together. Even though those are two different data systems for us, it's not for them. And so when it comes to this, we really started to talk about how do we start to bring some of this data together so we can make some conclusions and we can start to think about how to take action as we learn more about like the holistic student, the whole student, because all these little pieces and parts of students are in all of these different systems. So this project started, I want to say at this point, maybe 8 years ago, and has really come to fruition the last couple of years. So it's taken us a long time to build this up, but we're really excited to share it with you. And so when we started to come together as a group in my office and think about how to bridge these silos, the first thing we wanted to do is figure out how do we collect all this data from all of these different departments, right? Up to 40. Once we collect that data, we have to actually get it to be able to come together, right? So all these different data systems are going to have different data sets, variable names, way the data is structured, number of tables. Things are going to be really different, and we're going to have to learn all of these different systems and find some way to bring it together. And then once we do, we can't stop there. We want to be able to share it so that departments can see it, they can use it, they can take action. So that was our goal. So, as you maybe imagine, I don't know, collecting the data took many years because we really needed to think about how to do this in a systematic way that could be then put together. And so today we're going to really be presenting one aspect of this, one aspect of the data we collected. We're working on it sort of bigger picture right now that we've had some success with the way we collected engagement data, which is what, when we get into the nitty gritty, Marjorie is going to be talking about. But basically, our case study is we know students are participating in lots of different things across all of these departments. They're participating in things in rec sports, they're participating in things in the Student Wellness Center, they're participating in things in housing and residence education. I could go on, but really each of those units have that information and no one else did. And so the very first thing we wanted to tackle was, can we bring that all together? Can we tag, where a student went, what they participated in, and when, and put that in one place? And that was our very first goal. And that's what we're going to be presenting to you today. So when you're thinking about different types of data, there are lots of different types of data out there. And they live in sort of different types of places. And so on the last slide, you saw, there's operational data and there's student data. So operational data might be things that, Buck ID collects about, where a student goes in and when. Student data is more information about the student themselves, like what classes they're in, maybe when did they start the university, etc. So that's sort of the different types. And then where that data could live, it could live in lots of different types of places, which is on the next slide. So one of them, in Ohio State in particular, we have something called content management systems. And those are systems that are typically managed within, like internally, by our student life tech services. So for instance, the StarRes system, well, actually that's an external vendor, sorry. Our eKey system is an internal security system that was built by our student life tech services. And then we have a content management system for housing, which is StarRes, which is an external vendor. So those content management systems could be either external vendors or internally managed. We have like another one that's our Buckeye Serve content management system, which is alternative break trip system that is managed internally. Our student org management system is another one managed internally. But data doesn't necessarily have to live like in that sort of formal system. It could live potentially just on someone's desk and a list, right? It could live in an Excel doc that lives in a shared drive in a unit's sort of structure, their structure in their unit. So those are another place that data could live. We are going to be talking about today a custom collection web form that we created to collect that data. So Marge will get more into that. And then data, at least at Ohio State, a lot of data lives in something called our student information system. Our student information system is currently housed in a data warehouse called the RAY, Reporting and Analytics Environment. And so that's a lot of that student information I was talking about. When did they start? What classes are they in? Are they out of state, in state, international, etc.? Internally in student life, we also have a data warehouse in the program Azure Synapse, which is a Microsoft program. And so some of the data from the Ray and otherwise lives in that lake too. So as you can see, data, there's lots of types of data. It can live in lots of different places. How do we bring it all together? So great sentence up here. Thank you, Marjorie. You have to get the data in one place to use it, right? You have to do that. And so we spent a lot of time auditing all of the different systems in student life, all the different ways that our partners might be collecting information about what their students were participating in and when, and wanted to bring it basically all together to live in one place and then put into a place that is accessible to other individuals in the university. And so we took that information from our content management systems, rosters that were sort of kept internally, some information about the students. We brought it together and we put it into that reporting and analytics environment, which is that university-wide data lake that I was just talking about. And so we're going to get into the details of how we did all that. That's going to be Marjorie, so I'm excited. But then our goal, once we got it into one place, was to actually display it. And our very first way of displaying it, because I don't think this will be the only way we display it, is a Tableau dashboard. So we chose Tableau for this particular project. And we essentially created, and I think there's going to be a couple slides or screenshots, but I'll go through it a little bit. Essentially created a way for our partners to learn about the students who are participating in the types of programs that they offer, as well as the types of programs that they don't offer, and really filter it down to learn about those specific students, and some details about those students they might not have known over time. So we're able to really look at that over time. So like I said, we have access to both Tableau and Power BI as sort of this dynamic interactive way of reporting. We chose to do Tableau given the type of data that we wanted to visualize in this case. We wanted it to be interactive because we wanted our partners to be able to filter it. So we didn't go the static way, but that's obviously another kind of report that you could make, and that we'll likely be making at some point as we really dive into this data. So Marjorie's going to take over, but just really briefly, did you want me to talk a little bit more about the dashboard, or do you want me to just turn it over to you?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So on this dashboard, and so it's a little bit small, but and Marge is going to show you bigger screenshots soon. But there are basically three types of filters. So you can filter by time. So if you're interested in a particular time period, like last academic year, or the past 3 years, the past 5 years, you can filter it based on year and semester. You can also filter it based on some student variables like the academic level. So are they a grad student, an undergrad student, the campus that they were on. So there are, I think, 4 or 5 regional campuses at Ohio State. You can filter based on the campus they were on. We also have filters for if they were a military affiliated or not. And then if they were in a learning community in the halls through our housing and residential education group. And then finally, you can also filter it based on some information about the division, basically. If you're interested in that like holistic student support and wellness unit or the residential experience unit or area, you can filter to that. You can then filter down to specific units like our, sorry, my throat, like our housing and residence education unit or a student wellness center unit. You can look specifically at activities themselves. So if you want to know about Buckeye Serve, which I mentioned earlier, the alternative break trips, you can filter to that. And then also if they were a student employee or not, we have by unit who is a student employee and when. So you can filter to that too. And so once you've filtered all of these, you will see that, 102,902. That number is the unique number of students we have in the dashboard right now. So it doesn't include basically how many activities they participated in. This is like unique numbers. So we have lots and lots of students who participated in at least one student life offering. And that filter or that bar will change based on how you filter it. And then on the next slides or the next pages, which Marjorie will show you soon, you can see information about the student characteristics as well as the activity characteristics, like type of activity that it was, like service or leadership, sports, etc. So yeah, so I'm excited for you to learn the details now. I will turn it over to Marjorie to do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Leah. Yeah, so we are going to get into the dashboard in more depth a little bit later, but for now, I'm going to sort of take us back to sort of the impetus of this whole project, the case study. Basically, leadership was interested in getting a more complete picture of student participation outside of each department or each area. They were interested in, well, what are students participating in? Are there any gaps in places where we could be offering activities? Are there any places where we're duplicating efforts, things like that? And so this uh, project was born. Basically, it required a ton of interdepartmental collaboration and partnership. So with technology services was the big one. They were super, super helpful. They created the roster collection website for us. And they are the ones who work all the behind the scenes magic to transfer the data from the roster collection website, which I will show you, to the data lake for sharing with others. Um, and then also we collaborated, it requires a lot of departmental collaboration. So our departmental partners are now tasked with tracking student participation in their different activities if they want to be able to to see it in the dashboard. So they now have to track what maybe they weren't tracking before. They have to collect all these things and they have to provide it to us on a regular basis, semesterly, yearly. So we are asking them for a little bit of work, and we'll sort of talk through how uh, what sort of reward we give them for that work. Uh, I see a question, Leah, here that says, "How did you begin the conversations about importance of unifying the data? Did they start at the departmental level or the leadership level?" I'm gonna have to bring Leah in on this one because this happened before I got here.
Yes, that's a great question, Vanessa. It was a little bit of both, if that makes sense. I think some of the central departments in student life had sort of independently started to talk about this idea. Our office was one, tech services was actually another one, because when we approached them for the partnership, they were like, "Oh, are we finally doing it?" And they were very excited because they had been talking about it. But the impetus, I think the one of the main reasons we got buy-in was because it was the leadership that ended up saying we really want to make this happen. So we were able to leverage our strong leaders to sort of socialize that and get buy-in. So when we were making these asks, which weren't small asks, we were really able to get the information that we needed to bring it together.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Oh, what made us choose Tableau over the other dashboard platforms? So that, I guess the university had more standardization surrounding Tableau at the time. Now they sort of have some Power BI standardization, but it was because we were bringing together multiple data sets and sort of using Tableau to unite them. So I'll talk a little bit about this later, but mostly we're connecting the participation data to the student information data. So those are two different like tables that need to be combined together. And Tableau was at the time better at doing that. RBI might have caught up now, and now it's in Tableau and I don't want to make it again. So that's why we're keeping it in Tableau.
Yeah, I do
Okay.
think at the time Tableau was better suited, had the features we wanted and the look we wanted. And I agree with Marjorie that Power BI at this point is caught up in a lot of ways, but at the time, I think that was like 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, next question's a good one too. Nathan asked, were you able to automate any of the information sharing? Uploading yearly rosters from smaller departments might be reasonable, but uploading daily rec center usage is overwhelming. This is very true.
Yes. So we do have some automation. Some, we'll talk about this a little bit, but some of our systems are instead, some of our activities, since they have their own websites, we're just reaching into those data that's already stored and grabbing it for them using the help of technology services. Um, and then we do, uh, the analysts are here to help basically as much as our partners need for gathering a ton of data. Um, and I think most of the bigger ones use app dedicated systems. So it's more of like the smaller ones that are using the collection website, like uh, instead of just sort of grabbing and taking it somewhere else. All right. All right. So talking about this roster collection website we designed in partnership with Student Life Technology Services a two-step system to collect and display student information data with our Student Life partners. So it looks like this here, where um, you choose your activity from a drop-down list, you choose the term that you're submitting for, and then you just paste a list or write a list of identification numbers or name.numbers into this thing, and that's how you submit it. So basically, partners are submitting these head counts of students who participated in a specific activity, and we call those rosters. And this web form was supposed to make collection very easy, very simple for the partner, right? So, for example, if I'm working with the esports team and submitting esports team members, let's say I'm submitting for spring 2025, I literally just copy and paste the name.numbers of the people who are the students who are involved in that activity into this box here and then click submit. That's the first step. We recently implemented a second step where the website then has this automated review of what you've submitted. So if we go back, you'll see that I submitted my name.number twice, and then student.due and student.3. As you might expect, the website says only one of the four entries that you submitted are valid because one of them is me. Um, one entry is a duplicate, and it sort of shows this duplicate here. And then it says two entries are invalid. So it checks whether the name.number has ever been created or existed in the system. And then it says, well, given that you submitted four people, but only one people are going to be um, pushed through to the system, do you still want to submit this roster as is? I would press yes, and then it goes for review with the SAAL analysts. Or I could go back to the form and change up some of the submissions if I meant to type Freggens.10 or something like that. Um, So we put this in place, and I'm going to talk about this at the end. This was to give us more, to give our partners more clarification and understanding of, I sent you a list with 20 people. Why am I only seeing 15 in the dashboard? Well, it seems like five of your entries were either duplicates or invalid in some way, shape, or form. So that's for people with smaller rosters. Departments who have dedicated content management systems, we needed to work with them to take some of the work off of their hands since they're already managing this system. So this includes our living learning communities, our Buckeye Serve alternative break system, and then student organizations. All three of these have their own website and management system that technology services worked with them to create a long time ago. And we can just grab that data from them. So basically, we're getting permission from the department and the technical know-how from technology services to connect the data that already exists in their custom system and pull it into our table. And then as a note, this data sometimes had to be transformed or simplified to merge with the other rosters because these departments are using this data for very different things than what we are necessarily using it for. So once we've got all of our data, these rosters are then uploaded to a shared university-wide data lake. We call this the RAY, the Reporting and Analytics Environment. What's nice about this is that approved individuals can access and use the collected data. So there is a table, student life roster table that is in the data lake that as long as someone in student life has permission, they can go to it and download it and use it how they would wish. Because not a lot of our partners really have the time or inclination to go digging through the data in the RAY, we connected the data with our student information data and display it in a Tableau dashboard that our partners have access to. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. So Leah already sort of talked a little bit about this filter page, but basically for this dashboard, we wanted to share it widely and interactively. We wanted all OSU Student Life staff to have access, and then the CECL staff actually use it for checking that the process is working. I think I see some questions. Hang on one second. Is the data lake one large table or in multiple tables? So the data lake is in multiple tables. Thank you, Leah. But our engagement data is one long table. What type of metadata do you collect? We have, so for metadata, Kendra, we do have a separate sheet, Excel sheet where we have, for each activity, we have a bunch of metadata for that. So like what unit is it in? What area is it in? Different ways we classify the activity, which I will get to later. Um, and we know like who submitted the roster, when it was submitted, when it was approved by the CECL analyst, things like that. And we do, when programs shift over time, we're sort of managing that on our ends, like by being in contact with our partners. So each of the analysts are taking sort of a slice of these programs, and they're sort of the point person for making sure they get uploaded. The data dictionary gets updated as programs change or get paused or get added, things like that.
Great. And I can read the questions just in case others aren't having them in front. So Danielle asked a question, is the future goal to be able to collect counts of participation within a particular term? For example, a student may participate in esports once during fall 2025, while others may participate multiple times across fall 2025. I imagine some folks want to look at intensity of participation. So
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. Marjorie, do you want to talk a little bit about the duplicates? And then we can also talk about other
yeah,
analyses we plan to do.
yeah. So certain activities, so this is, we had to think about this while before we implemented this two-step system, because some of our activities like group fitness classes, the same student can participate in, as many times as they want within the semester. And we do want, our partner wants to know, the difference. They want to know that a student participated 6 times versus two times. Other things like a Buckeye Serve alternative break trip, you can only go on once a semester. So we want to automatically clean the duplicates out of that data. So it's based on at the level of the activity, and we do have it differentiating. And then we do have a table, or one of our pages in the dashboard at the end is where it looks at counts. And so you can see sort of in, including duplicates if your activity does, how many participations have happened.
Yes, and Danielle, just so you know, we won't go into it here, but because we are collecting all the raw data, even though the dashboard's displaying it in a particular way, we do have that, intensity or depth of participation. And we are going to be doing some analyses that look at the data differently than this dashboard displays them to get at some of what you were writing. So absolutely on the same page there. Okay, we just have a couple more and then you can get back to it. When you say student participation in the context of student organizations, does that refer to the students that attend an organization meeting on a given day? Knowing this can be different at the next meeting, or a one-time upload of any student that signed up to participate in that organization?
Yeah, this is a great question. So for student organizations, we don't have data. We don't have data on how many meetings they attended, but we do have, it's like a yearly um, update that each student organization has to do, where they list all of their members. So it's sort of on like a membership type of deal.
And then Vanessa asked what software that we use to collect the roster data. Marjorie, are you aware of the software name? Our tech services built this in-house, and so I'm actually not sure what program they use, but could
I have no
potentially
idea.
ask. So I could ask for you, Vanessa, while Marjorie's chatting. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. So we already went through the filter selection page, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But I'm just going to show you the next, there's three more pages that we have to show people. Um, so the next page we have is student demographics. These are the demographics that we are legally allowed to show due to state law in Ohio. So we've got first generation status, enrollment category, residence hall occupancy, college, and residency. And you'll notice that for each demographic, there's two bars. All the bars on the right show the entire Ohio State population makeup. So Ohio State has a 40% first gen makeup. And then the bar on the left shows the proportions for the involved students that you have selected using your filters. Because I didn't filter, this is all 102,902 unique students. And it looks like from here, uh, first gen, 10% fewer first gen students are participating in activities that we have in this roster than we would expect given the makeup of Ohio State University. Um, So this is broadly useful to student life staff. So you can filter down to an activity and see what the demographic makeup of your activity is that people have attended. You can look at it through different years. There's so many different filters that you can apply here. And so I think most staff find a good use for this page. Then the next page is where we get into sort of the metadata of the program. So this is what we call our breadth and depth page. So we have an overview of the types of activities students are engaging with. And this is mostly used by admins or AVPs because it can sort of show in your area or in your unit what are the types of activities students want to participate in, what are the lengths of commitment, what are the student roles, and then which of the Ohio State student life learning goals are these activities sort of tracking on to. Um, so this looks at participation by activity type, student role length, and learning goals. So as you can see here, um, half of our data comes from the student orgs. So lots of students are involved in the student orgs just as members. But then we also have 13% are involved in wellness activities, which would be, things hosted by the recreation facility, um, things like that. Probably because of student orgs, the length of commitment is that most students are engaging in is year-long activities, but we do see some day activities as well. 52% of our students are engaging in activities that cultivate community, and then 63% are just engaging as participants rather than a mentor or a mentee or like a formal leader of a group. Um, so this is probably heavily influenced by student organizations. We just got that data in this past year, but the user can always filter them out by the area or unit and sort of see what are the types of things that students are interested in or engaged in. Are there any questions that need answered
I'm
here?
answering them via chat, so you can keep
Oh,
going.
great. Okay, awesome. Let's see. Then the last page that I'm going to talk about is the roster trend page. So this has concrete numbers. It's basically organized. The rows, each row is an activity, and it's organized by the unit and the area that the activity is in. So I took a slice of this and to show you we have the academic partnership and career success. unit here or area here, sorry, with different units like the former Buckeye Careers, Scarlet and Gray Advantage, things like that. And then we have specific activities listed here. And then I have their numbers each year going backwards from 2024 to 2018. And so this is mainly used by Cecil staff to check roster progress, to make sure that the roster has been submitted and made it into the Ray and then made it into the dashboard. But I think staff could use this to look at long-term trends over time. So Scarlet and Gray Advantage is the program that students enroll in where they are trying to graduate debt-free, I think, over 4 years. And it started in spring 2023 with 119 participants, and that has tripled in the past 2 years to 382 participants. So you can sort of see where the trends of participation are increasing or decreasing. And the Center for the Study of Student Life consistently employs 2 undergraduate students. So you can see that that number does not change over the years. So those are the 4, I guess, pages of the dashboard. Are there any questions before I go on to anything else?
I am responding to Paul right now, but I can just do it verbally. Paul had a great question about, you have a lot of data. Are you going to be looking at, retention, graduation, which programs or activities are best predictors, find out the sweet spot for engagement? And it's a great question, Paul. So yes, our plan is to look at some of these data by cohort. So tracking sort of the complete breadth and depth of a new first year student cohort all the way to graduation. And we will be looking at some of that when we do that analysis. So that's a great question. And then there's one more from Jess. For the student life learning goals, are those university established? And do the individual units determine which goals apply to which activities?
Yes. So those the learning goals were determined by a committee of members across student life. And there's 4 of them. There's cultivate community, embrace self-discovery, foster health and well-being, and then think critically or critical thinking. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but basically for each activity, we worked with the person implementing that activity to sort of map on, does it map onto any of the student life learning goals? And if so, which one do you think it maps onto primarily? And then if you had to do a secondary sort of map. All
And
right.
then I did get the information about what they used to build the roster data collection web form. So I just sent that to Vanessa.
Nice. All
Right.
right. So, and now I think I'm just going to talk about some like overview ideas of what we learned alongside this process, things like that. So, the first thing I want to talk about is buy-in. So generating buy-in can make the difference between failure and success. You want everyone involved to be excited about the project, not just you as the person who thought it up and thinks it's really cool and wants to see the data, but also the partners who are giving you the data and the leaders that are sort of uh, making priorities known. Right? Everyone should be excited about the project. So in order to do this, you do really want to introduce the benefits of the system to partners, right? So we want to advertise that how cool it is to get all of the data into one spot that they could then access, and that there will be this dashboard that they won't have to do anything to get it to work. They would just get it as a resource if they participate. We did have to give a lot of trainings on how to submit rosters in lots of different forms. We've done meetings, both with individuals and with departments. We've done presentations and roadshows just like this. We've done recorded videos and webinars. A system like this also takes a lot of maintenance, both from the partners and from the implementation team. So the collected data needs to be accurate and updated. So the partners get requests every semester, every year to um, to submit their data to us. And then the analysts, the CESAL analysts, are always auditing the rosters and the dashboard to make sure that all the data that you expect is going through the um through the pipeline and not getting lost for any reason, things like that. We do have email reminders that get sent out to partners to upload rosters every semester. Like I said, each analyst takes sort of like a slice of the work corresponding to what their day-to-day units they partner with are. And then we do have the Tableau dashboard can to display the data and sort of show us what are we seeing, what are we missing. There were some roadblocks as well, as you might imagine, in creating this. So departmental comfort with collecting and organizing data varies. Some departments and people in departments are like super data people, love the data, love getting it into an organized state. And then some are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. This sounds like a lot more work, which is fair. So it did require some sort of educational sessions or individual consulting. We at Center for Study of Student Life have implemented this student life assessment community. We call it Slack. And this is where we host semesterly workshops and presentations that are designed to educate really anyone who attends about assessment in general and how to apply assessment to their specific projects. And we send out the invites to everyone in student life. Um, so we're trying to build the culture of assessment at Ohio State. We've done topics like operational data, dashboard showcases, Excel skills. The last one we just did was dashboard detectives, which we all played detectives and we were trying to use the dashboards to answer very specific questions. So that's one way in which you can sort of build a culture of assessment. I'm sure there are many others. Sort of related to this, partner enthusiasm varies. So some people are super psyched about it, and some, like I said, are like, you're giving me too much work. I'm already doing a bunch. I don't want to do this. So being able to incentivize the roster submission by like giving them something concrete that they will get out of it um, was, I think, really crucial to overcoming that roadblock. And then the last thing you always have to keep in mind is confidentiality and data stewardship. So there are a bunch of things that Student Life does for students that's super confidential. Like we don't display the membership in disability services or the number of counseling visits or who's insured with the OSU health insurance, right? Student conduct. These are things that we are not going to put in there because to protect student privacy, basically. We did learn some lessons along the way. Begin with the end in mind is a big one. Like I sort of mentioned, the two-step submission process was only recently implemented because we learned that we needed a better auditing process in order to accurately know who's submitting what, why did certain entries fail, what did they fail on, and like what the number should be, because we were having to sort of go into R and calculate it all ourselves, which was maybe a lot more work than we wanted to do. So it would have been easier if we had thought about that ahead of time, but we didn't. Collaboration is super important. You want support from the project from your leadership, but you also need strong partnership for technology services because they do so much behind the scenes to scaffold and make it possible that I don't even know how to get started to do. And then be prepared to educate and coach departmental partners. And then the last thing I would say is understand your scope. So you can't start out doing and collecting everything. So just know in advance what you will or will not collect because people will want to throw data in here because they're super excited about it. But you have to know, oh, maybe that doesn't fit the brief, basically. All right. So thank you. Um, we can do questions and comments. I know there's been questions in the chat along the way.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, there's been great questions. So we do have another 8 minutes to answer more. It looks like Paul just sent one in. If you had 100% buy-in across all of student affairs, Paul's an optimist, how many staff members would you ideally need to fully realize your long-term vision? Paul, do you mean staff members in our office, like in an analyst role? Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do split this work up. Marjorie is the lead analyst on this, but the other three analysts we have in our office do quite a bit of work with the partners to get that data in, to audit the information. And so I think you could potentially have one full-time analyst doing all of it, but then there would need to be significantly less on their plate than Marjorie also has on her plate. So I'd say it would probably take, I don't know, Marjorie, what do you think? Would it take like 50% of someone's role, 70% of
Yeah,
someone's role? Okay.
probably 50 to 75% if they
Okay.
had to do everything from the ground up, even with partnering with the technology services and the other departments.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you, Nathan and Paul. Um, yes, we will be sharing the slides. Great. Thanks, Danielle. I'm glad this was helpful. Thanks, Bella. It's great. Okay, it sounds like you collect data on an ongoing basis. Do you do an annual report for leadership?
So we do have an automated dashboard report that goes out. What is it? I think it's every semester, and it does an automatic filtering. So like for the AVP of a residential experience, it filters just that area and then sends that report to them. But it's just sort of a link to the dashboard with filters already applied. It's not like a full report or anything like that, a static report or anything like that.
Yeah, so we use that to sort of keep in our leadership mind that this resource exists, which I do think helps because then they'll come to us when, they have a question that they think the dashboard might be able to answer. So that's sort of the way we keep them up to date. Great. Thank you all for all of the compliments. We appreciate you being
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
If there are any more questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes.
Yeah, let me stop
And feel free to
sharing.
email us at the Cecil email. We're happy to answer more questions there too.
As we wrap up, let's give our speakers a round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Leah Halper and Dr. Marjorie Freggens, for sharing your insights with us today. A recording of today's session, along with any resources, will be shared via email and available on SAAL's website. We hope to see you at our next structured conversation, which is scheduled for Thursday, February 5th. The session is titled Leading with Empathy, Reimagining Assessment Culture for Impact, and the link for registration has been put in the chat. You can also submit a proposal to present. More details are also available on our website. Thanks again for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.